unit, but as you can see also a really cozy and a homey place to do Fiera Artificiali. And we have this collaboration from 2 years, I think. Yeah. We are so strong and structured now with the team. And so I want to invite you next week. I know that it's really close, but it's different because next week we will have a creative evening, not a creative morning. And that's one of my favorite change of format. Because we'll do everyone's. Yeah, because it's not. I'm not a morning person, so I prefer like late night person. We'll do an open mic, so we invite you to think about maybe if you want to express something about maybe your year or maybe your work. The theme is cycle, so it's very open if you think, no? And we'll do an open mic in the beautiful chapel that maybe someone remembers of the last year of the Yellow Square. It's not a real chapel. It was a real chapel, but then it's like a stage, a beautiful stage. And then we'll have a karaoke. So, if you want a karaoke it's open for everyone. So, of course, you can invite everyone, but it's really, really, for us, it's like to say, goodbye to the year, but also very like, okay, we are free to express ourselves, singing like a very embarrassing song in front of our community. So, if you want to take action, it's delivery coffee. Yeah. So if you want to come, we're very happy to see you in the 6th, so next week in the Yellow Square. So add in your calendar and be free to sing, like share a song or like Raffaella Terra song with us. And I just want to give a welcome also to Maria Chiara. Yes. Hello. So thank you, Silvia. Thank you. As usual. As you know, we have Creative Mornings. I know there are new people here, but I invite you to check every channel we have online to learn more about the Creative Mornings, so we can give the stage to our speakers soon. So, the theme of the month, thank you, is threads, and what it means. Threads are the connections between us. Threads are the thing that we can pull to see the structure of something, and threads are the structure of something. And I think we will explore this theme in a very interesting and very specific way today, but later. And before, in the name of our international community Creative Mornings, I want to thank our new global sponsor, Adobe. And I already know there is someone here who's going to speak with us later, because we are asking for new volunteers for the next year, and in particular, we already have a lot of things in mind, so I hope that many people will come and join us for an hour a week, for every day, for chatting to us and helping us out during the event, or helping us out during the preparation times. I want to thank you, the location again, Fiera Artificiali. I want you to explore their channels and speak with Lino and ask Lino for a coffee. That's mine. And also, I want to thank Good Base, who is our breakfast provider for today. So maybe someone of you met Lais before. She was here. She's also a member of Creative Mornings, and she just opened this very, very interesting startup lately. Again, we will wait for you next week too, for our December event. So
I love the photo. We will
be. Yeah, we will not be anything about like this. We will be like, I don't know, drunk and totally
exactly
out of our mind. But that's it. So I'm really happy to welcome Edoardo Maggio. Woo! And I already forgot everything about your job title. So, senior writer, editor, and content designer at Maze, and many other things. And about what? So, can I just like spoil a bit?
Yeah,
okay. Because about the theme we are going to explore with Edoardo, I want to give you a very, very little
preview of something that will happen in March, because we are partnering with a big AI event. And stay tuned, we will let you know a lot about that. I think it will be super interesting also for you maybe. So thank you very much for being here. Enjoy the talk. And
thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. And first of all, thank you for being here. I know that you've powered through the strike this morning and just waking up early to listen to a stranger talk. So I'm sure there's a part of you that is reasonably thinking that you should have stayed in bed. So again, thank you. Hopefully this presentation will be worth your time. And so to start things off, we're going to talk about this title maybe later, and we're going to have time for questions. But to misquote Mark Twain, I would say that I really wanted to give you a short presentation, but I didn't have the time, so there's going to be a long one instead. So who's this stranger again? So hi, my name is Edoardo Maggio. I come from a small town in the southeast of Italy. It's called Lecce. Beautiful city if you happen to go there. I studied and graduated in London. I got a bachelor in media communication and journalism in particular. And when I was in London, I was working across a few newsrooms in the United States and the UK, so specifically 95 Mac, 95 Google, very nerdy websites, and Business Insider. And then in 2018, I came back to Italy to study a master's in digital interaction design here at Milan. And then in 2021, I changed my career from a journalist to a content designer at Maze, the company that I currently work for. It used to be known as Farm Innovation back then, now it's part of another group. But you really shouldn't care about any of that, because the reason you might want to care about me, and I assume the reason why I'm here, is that I've been following and really obsessing over technology in this industry for over a decade at this point. And case in point, this is one of the very first articles that I wrote about AI. This is 2016, so 8.5 years ago. Back then I had a hunch that AI was going to be important, but I had absolutely no idea just how consequential this whole field would become. But I've been really thinking about this stuff for a long, long time. And that was the problem, because when I started thinking about this presentation, I was like, okay, I have 20 minutes. What the hell am I going to talk about? Because this field is just, it's gigantic, right? Like everything is AI these days. And then just this sort of the scale, the speed, and just the trajectory of the phenomenon are just astonishing, right? So we're not talking about, I don't know, like literature or history, which are sort of fixed fields. This stuff is on constantly moving and shifting platform. And so it's really hard to pinpoint something that's going to stay relevant even just a few months ahead. And I was thinking, can I use this time to give the listeners some meaningful, relevant answers about the world of AI? And the answer that I came to was a resounding no. I cannot do that. And spoiler, neither can anyone else. And actually, I urge you to be suspicious of people who say they do have answers about AI. What I'm trying to do here, and in my job as well, is to try to work out the right questions. And sort of as we sort of pull the yarn, and there's a whole lot of thread about AI that unravels. And as this mess sort of untangles, we can hopefully become just a little bit more prepared about the future and the turning points that are about to come. Remember, nobody's got a crystal ball. So unless you've been living under a rock, you may have noticed that this little thing called AI is getting kind of huge these days. And there are so many vectors along which we can sort of actually define what we mean by huge. But what feels important to me right now is to make you understand that I think AI really is not a fad. It's not something that has just the potential to change everything. It's very much doing that already. And AI is real and it's working. Unlike some other things that you may have heard of in the past few years, like metaverse or the whole crypto, Web3, and I mean, there's parts of that are actually interesting, but this time it's really different. Does anybody know who this guy is? Just looking at his face. I'm sure you do. This is Sam Altman. He's the CEO of OpenAI, so probably the single biggest, most important AI company in the world. The company that created ChatGPT, and he gives all sorts of podcast interviews and whatnot. But we're going to see a lot of him today. But I particularly like this one quote that he gave in this interview because it briefly touches on the relationship between the artificial and the intelligence. And this is what he has to say. It's hard to make confidence. Oops, it's not working, the audio. Possiamo rimettere l'audio al...
Sì, è saltato, scusami.
Yeah, sorry. I'm gonna stare at Sam's blank face for a while.
Okay, probably.
Ah, perché l'avevo scritto io, scusate.
Ah,
C'era la musica, allora adesso lo spingo.
so we can talk
It's
about
my fault, guys.
Yes. Si prova? Yes.
No, let's connect again.
I create a disaster. Sorry.
I mean, of course, we're going to talk about AI and how everything is going to change, and then, of course, this stuff happens.
Have you seen this part of, have you seen the emails between Musk and Salon?
We can do a whole 20-minute presentation
It's
just
just
about
like
that.
made it into a Notebook LM podcast.
Yeah.
10-minute podcast.
Amazing stuff. Let's see if it works.
It's hard to make confident statements a couple of years in the future about where this is all going to go. And so don't want to try now. I will say that I expect lots of very capable models in the world. And, you know, like, it feels to me like we just like stumbled on a new fact of nature or science, whatever you want to call it, which is like, we can create, you can like, I mean, I don't believe this literally, but it's like a spiritual point. You know, intelligence is just this emergent property of matter, and that's like a rule of physics or something.
You can see a lot of things about Sam Altman, but one of the things that I'm pretty sure is that he's earnest when he says this stuff. And just this quote, like this idea that intelligence is an emergent property of matter, I think that it's impressively deep for something that's supposed to be just a technology. I think that is really powerful. And even if you think that Sam Altman is like some kind of Silicon Valley techno bros just trying to hop things up, you can listen to a lot of other people saying similar things. One of them is this guy. Does anybody know who this is? You probably do. This guy's name is Geoffrey Hinton, widely considered to be one of the, if not the godfather of AI. He won the Turing Award in 2018. Turing Award is essentially the computer science Nobel Prize. He was vice president of AI research for Google for a decade, and he just happens to have the highest number of citations across both cognitive and computer science in academic papers. And given that that was not enough, he actually won the Nobel Prize for physics just a few months ago for his contributions on AI. So he's basically a nobody. And what does this nobody say about AI? I'd like to share this clip with you.
These AI systems are better at learning than the human mind. I think they may be, yes. And at present, they're quite a lot smaller. So even the biggest chatbots only have about 1 trillion connections in them. The human brain has about 100 trillion. And yet, in the 1 trillion connections in chatbot, it knows far more than you do in your 100 trillion connections, which suggests it's got a much better way of getting knowledge into those connections.
A much better way of getting knowledge that isn't fully understood.
We have a very good idea of roughly what it's doing. But as soon as it gets really complicated, we don't actually know what's going on anymore than we know what's going on in your brain.
What do you mean we don't know exactly how it works? It was designed by people.
No, it wasn't. What we did is we designed the learning algorithm. That's a bit like designing the principle of evolution. But when this learning algorithm then interacts with data, it produces complicated neural networks that are good at doing things, but we don't really understand exactly how they do those things.
So yeah, AI
Did you actually talk like that? Like
No, this was cut out because it was quite a long clip, and the presentation is long, so I wanted to try to do something short. I'm sorry about that. There's going to be another couple of this sped up videos. I'm sorry about that. Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that I was struggling to find exactly what to talk about, and unfortunately we don't have the time to talk about depth, as I mentioned, and to get into the sort of philosophical implications about awareness and cognition and so on and so forth. And because AI is really something that should be treated with a chisel, but unfortunately we have this 20-minute act and I'm already running late. So many things will be just touched slightly or assume some knowledge. So I apologize in advance for that. And we're going to have time later for questions if something is not clear. But what does huge mean, actually? The things that we can talk about are some of the vectors that I mentioned earlier, and specifically these three: scale, speed, and trajectory. And these are particularly interesting because they are, for some reason, they often seem to be lacking in the sort of public discourse about AI. And it all starts with this fallacy, and I see this particularly here in this country, in the US and in the UK, which are sort of the countries where most of this stuff happens. You see it a little less, but for some reason, people seem to be stuck on the idea that GPT-4, which is like the sort of the best model that we have right now, is going to be the sort of be-all, end-all of AI. And for some reason, people extrapolate on that and they start talking about the future of AI, thinking that it's all going to be stuck to GPT-4 level, and you see all these posts on LinkedIn by all these senior level managers. The longer the title, the stupider the statement seems to be. It's not a hard rule, but after a while you start to see a pattern for some reason, and this is it's a fallacy. It's not true, because the AI training is definitely going to chew ahead, and it is continuing. Of course, we have the current models and the near future AIs, which are probably going to just wreck, and at least this is how it actually feels from the inside. So starting to actually analyze these factors. First of all is the scale. So just the raw computational power that these systems are using. This guy, his name is Kevin Scott. He's the Chief Technology Officer of Microsoft. Microsoft is the company that is essentially funding OpenAI. If GPT can exist, it's essentially thanks to budget allocated by this guy. I'm sorry, this is spat out as well a little bit. And this is what he had to say. This is a conference that he gave at Microsoft a few months ago, and this is what he was talking about.
The other thing that is really driving progress is not just this sort of completion of the Copilot stack, this sort of progress that we're making in filling out that toolkit for you all so that it is easier for you to build software. But we are riding like a fundamental wave in the development of this AI platform, where if you just sort of look at compute over time, like how much GPU cycles or accelerator cycles that we're using to train the very biggest models in the world, since about 2012, like that rate of increase in compute when applied to training has been increasing exponentially. And we are nowhere near the point of diminishing marginal returns on how powerful we can make AI models as we increase the scale of compute.
That was fast. I'm sorry. But we do have this quote, which is, I think, the important thing. He says, we are nowhere near the point of diminishing marginal returns and how powerful we can make these models by increasing the scale of compute. And so this is based on the idea that if you feed more data to larger computer clusters, what comes out on the other end, it's essentially going to be a more intelligent system. These are called a scaling law, kind of in the same vein of Moore's law that you may have heard of. And so far, this thing has worked out great. So there's reason to believe that it's going to continue. Still talking about scale, I shamelessly stole this slide from Bennett Evans. A guy you may have heard of is a famous tech analyst. He gives this yearly presentation. I strongly encourage you to check him out. This is one of the slides just showing just how much money just the 4 big companies, so Amazon, who's behind Anthropic, one of the big AI labs, Microsoft behind OpenAI, Alphabet, which is Google, and then Meta, how much they're spending, and just looking at the trend line, you can extrapolate in the future and understand that spending is actually going to increase. Just this year, they've spent about $220 billion. It's an insane number, and it's only going to get larger. Then there's the thing about speed, which means essentially adoption and how quickly just AI is spreading in the world in terms of like how many people use it, how many users, how many companies, and just the infrastructure that's been built. You may have heard, this was last year, that ChatGPT became the fastest consumer product to ever hit the 100 million weekly user mark. And then it just doubled that in less than a year. So this is from, I think it was the end of August. Yes, it got to 200 million users. And it's only going to turn 2 tomorrow. ChatGPT did not exist today, 2 years ago. That is insane if you think about it. In terms of adoption, this is another slide that I shamelessly stole. This is from a partner at our firm about adoption in companies, and essentially saying that 80% of CIOs and tech executives are planning to fully integrate and adopt generative AI in their company by 2027. That's also a huge number. And then there's the infrastructure part. Another famous dude in AI, this is Jensen Huang. He's the CEO of NVIDIA, the company that actually designs the GPUs. And in this particular interview, he was talking about xAI, which is Elon Musk's AI company. They were setting up one of those giant supercomputer clusters made of 100,000 GPUs, and just listen to what he says.
But what they achieved is singular, never been done before. Just to put in perspective, 100,000 GPUs, that's easily the fastest supercomputer on the planet. That's one cluster. A supercomputer that you would build would take normally 3 years to plan,
right?
And then they deliver the equipment, and it takes 1 year to get it all working.
Yes.
We're talking about 19 days.
Wow.
Like, that is just absolutely insane. How do you shrink something that usually takes takes 3 to 4 years into 19 days. Like this just gives you an idea of just how fast this is all going. And so when you combine the scale and the speed, you start to get a sense of the trajectory, like where things are going, why we're not stopping GPT-4 level, and we won't be coming in the coming future. And so again, going back to sped up getting Scott.
But we've also been hard at work building new supercomputing infrastructure and working with our partners at OpenAI to push that frontier forward. And like we showed this slide at the beginning, like there's this like really beautiful relationship right now between sort of exponential progression of compute that we're applying to building the platform, to the capability and power of the platform that we get. I just wanted to, sort of without mentioning numbers, which is sort of hard to do, to give you all an idea of the scaling of these systems. So in 2020, we built our first AI supercomputer for OpenAI. It's the supercomputing environment that trained GPT-3. And so like, we're gonna just choose marine wildlife as our scale marker. So you can think of that system as big as a shark. So the next system that we built, scale-wise, is about as big as an orca. And like that is the system that we delivered in 2022 that trained GPT-4. The system that we have just deployed is like scale-wise about as big as a whale relative to like the shark-sized supercomputer and this orca-sized supercomputer. And it turned out we can build a whole hell of a lot of AI with a whale-sized supercomputer. I just want everybody to really, really be thinking clearly about, and like this is going to be our segue to talking with Sam. Is the next sample is coming.
I mean, I understand that it was a bit too fast, but I think that you get the point. The point was actually just to show this. Like, you saw the exponential line, so you start to understand the trajectory. And we, as humans, we tend to have a very, very bad grasp of how exponentials work. But this is what is happening right now. And of course, this is just, again, as you're saying, a metaphor, but it should give you like a better understanding of what we actually mean when we say the AI is huge. So having this sort of coordinates, and how obviously the future is not going to be based on the current AI systems. And so indeed, when you have all this talent, all this money, and all this compute, like people actually start to wonder why. Like why are we doing this? Like where are we going? What is this trajectory that we're talking about? And the funny thing is that the AI labs themselves are actually giving us the answer. If you go to OpenAI's website, they explicitly state that their goal is to build an AGI, which is artificial general intelligence. What is an AGI? That is a can of worms that we really don't have the time to get into, but for the purpose of this presentation, since there is no universally agreed upon definition of what an AGI is, we can again use a pretty good definition, which again comes from OpenAI's website, when you say that it's a highly autonomous system that outperforms humans at most economically valuable work. And so unlike today's AIs, whose application is very much limited, an AGI system is something that can generalize across like a broad range of domains and sort of adapt dynamically to unseen situations and just to solve all kinds of problems. So essentially kind of like our brain works, but better. That's sort of the idea. And so people start to think, okay, when is this coming? When is AGI coming with all the speed and the compute and the urgency? Again, there is no crystal ball, but we do have some tools. One of my favorites are prediction markets, because they're not oracles, but they do tend to be well calibrated for some things. Like most recently, prediction markets were used to predict Trump's victory in the US election. And some of the biggest markets on AGI predict that there might be a reasonable chance that AGI comes within 6 to 8 years, so 2030, 2032. And even Saltman himself, on a recent blog post, said that superintelligence, which is technically something different from AGI, but it really doesn't matter, it's just a few thousand days away, which essentially means within this decade. And if you think about it, that is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, we just said that ChatGPT came out 2 years ago, and we had essentially nothing public before that, if not for developers. And now we're talking about having superintelligence within a decade. That is ridiculous. And so the mean that we saw earlier, you can extrapolate from that and just assume that it's probably going to continue. So just as the future AGIs are going to crush the current systems, it's reasonable to think there's going to be even more powerful systems like AGIs that come and cross the system that we're about to see in the next years. And we're mostly talking about OpenAI, and again, this is Sam Altman, but almost everyone in the field broadly agrees with these timelines and with these ideas and with this trajectory. And that's one of the reasons why some of them can go out and make podcasts and say stuff like this.
ChatGPT is not phenomenal. Like ChatGPT is like mildly embarrassing at best. GPT-4 is the dumbest model any of you will ever have to use again by a lot.
I mean, you're the CEO of a company that's making this wildly innovative and used product, and you just go out and trash it like that. Why would you do that? It's because you're confident in the idea that this is actually a pretty, it's amazing, it's an amazing model for some things, but it's still pretty dumb, pretty stupid. I mean, if you've used it, you've noticed the limitations. They're still mostly that, and we're definitely moving past that. And so we don't know if an AGI is coming, but it's not unreasonable to think that it is coming, given all these premises. And if it comes, it may be soon-ish. And in any case, even if we don't really get to an AGI as soon as we think that we might, the models are still getting progressively more general, so advancing their generality, getting better, capable of doing more things and doing them better. And we seem to be wholly unprepared for this. This is the stuff that really worries me. And mostly because we cling on to bullshit like this when people say, sure, but yeah, it's never going to be able to do X. And then without fail, 3 months go by and AI becomes capable of doing exactly the thing people said that it would never be able to do. It kind of reminds me of this. Published in the New York Times in 1903, men won't fly for 1 million years. Does anybody know how long it takes for the Wright brothers to make the first?
10 years.
9 days. It was December 17th. 1 million years to 9 days. So, you know, when we make these bets, we should probably bet against them ourselves. Right, so there's going to be a lot of weirdness. We have to stay alert, masters in, now what? As I said, I'm not here to give you answers. The coordinates that we were talking about should be reference points and hopefully food for thought, not definitive answers. However, and for some reason this image is missing, but it was just a cover of a book that I had a chance to co-author one of the chapters of his book together with the top management of Chakala, the company that my company is a part of. And we were looking at sort of the long-term horizon, so 10, 15 years, and thinking about a world with AGI in it, and like, how's it going to look like? And it's probably going to be unrecognizable in some ways, and so it's really almost impossible to speculate about how that world is going to look in practice. And so we really had to sort of narrow things down and extrapolate on just one thing, sort of pull a thread and see how it unravels. Not making predictions, because we really didn't want to say, we think that X is going to happen, because as you just saw, it's really hard to make predictions. But to make educated guesses, which is, it might be semantics, but there is a subtle difference there, because an educated guess is like saying, given these premises, we think that it's reasonable that this thing might happen. And so the thing that we wanted to focus on was jobs, because obviously that's what's on everyone's mind. And at the end of the chapter, the conclusion that we came to, there's actually going to be a powerful AGI system in the world. Most jobs, as we know them today, might just simply go away. That's a real chance that it's going to happen in the not-so-distant future. We're not here to mince words. I think this is a very real possibility. It's absolutely far from unreasonable. And this goes for both white and blue colors, because of all these sort of advancements and evolutions that are happening in the world of robotics and humanoid robots. But that's sort of for another day. But when you start thinking about it, like this is again the definition of an AGI, that is part of the pitch after all. Like, why are we doing this? What is the reason why people would be pursuing this sort of utopia dream of AGI? Well, part of that is to eliminate the need for jobs, right? And so there's a chance that it's not just that jobs go away, but it's the meaning of jobs as we think of them today that is going to go away as well. Although this is obviously an immensely complicated topic, and you know, the point again here is to say we should really start to think about this stuff more instead of trying to, you know, give out answers. But what are we supposed to do? 2 buts. Number one is that creating something does not mean having worldwide implementation overnight. And so there's always this cycle that these things have to go through. And although we have seen that adoption has been massive and quite fast, you still have to, first of all, create a thing, to engineer a thing, then you have to go to a phase of deployment, which means actually making the thing available to people, and then adoption, which means people actually using the stuff. And you can imagine that from here on out, there's just going to be just so many hurdles along the way. We're going to be talking about labor laws and unions coming in and just general unwillingness to change, regulations, all sorts of stuff. So it's not going to be immediate. Having an AGI in a lab somewhere does not mean that the world is going to change overnight. And of course, there's this idea of iterative deployment, because it's not like AGI is this one thing that one day doesn't exist and the next it does. It's not a single sort of defined, unified system. It's likely going to come in phases. Some people like to talk about weak AGI and then strong AGI. And for instance, there's going to be differences in just how long the system can operate. It's not going to be just one thing. So there's going to be a cycle of iteration. Of course, by that point, you can imagine that the AI is going to start sort of improve itself better than we do it. But that's another thing for another day. The process is going to be gradual. It's going to be full of friction, and some of it is undoubtedly going to be amazing, but some of it is probably going to be quite painful. And again, it's one of those things that we should start thinking about sooner rather than later. And then the second caveat is that unlike AIs, we are not just output-based machines. So unlike AIs, we were not designed by the principles of evolution, as Jeff Painting was saying, just to sort of complete tasks, right? We're not on this planet just to work. And if you can imagine a future where machines and AI systems just take care of things that today we have to do, well, that might be for the better, right? We might have the time to do other stuff. First thing. And second thing is that not all jobs will lose meaning, even in a world where AGI exists. And the reason why is that we inherently care about other humans, regardless of how we measure their actions. Because there are many occupations in which who you are matters more than what you do, or at least not less than what you do. And I'm going to try and give you a few examples. Like think about a YouTuber or a filmmaker. Like, why do you follow, or even an influencer? Why would you follow these people? Is it because you care about sort of the technical quality of the video that they create? Not really. You follow them because you're interested in that specific aspect of their life. You want to follow them because somehow you become attached to them. You care about them, right? Think about a musician. You're not just listening because you're like technically evaluating the quality of the sound, although that some people might appreciate that. You care about the way they express themselves through music. You can think about a chef. Like, why do you go to a restaurant? Is it just because you care about the technical execution of a dish? So something that a machine can, in the future, reasonably make better. You can imagine a restaurant where there's an AI chef robot that does every sort of dish you can imagine way better than any chef could. Would you go there? Maybe once, but you go to a restaurant because you care about the vibe, you care about the people, maybe you even care about the fact that there's this one particular person doing the dish, right? There's this aspect of human connection that is inherently part of what we do. That's still probably going to be relevant. And I don't know if you're noticing a trend, but all these people that were mentioned are creatives, like I assume most of you listening. And so just to conclude, whatever your craft is, I recommend that you really find your sort of personal brand, your personal expression, and to make sure that it's not just there for being a signature, for the sake of signature, but because it actually adds meaning to what you create, so that people come to you not just because of what you do, for the output that you create, but because there is something special in the fact that you are making it. And if you think about it, this is the kind of privilege that, I don't know, like doctors or lawyers or private bankers don't really have, because what they do is really output-based. They don't really get the chance to add the personal touch to what they do most of the times. And so this is a privilege that you have as creatives, and I think you should squander it. Because fighting on the quality of the output against the future AI systems is probably going to be a losing battle. There's no point in doing that. But there's one thing that you should take away from the talk, is that the AI can or will be able to do everything that you can, better, faster, at a fraction of the cost, but the AI cannot beat you. That is really important. This is, I think, the main takeaway of all this talk. there's a world awareness coming, so I think you should arm yourselves with the tools to sort of try and map it out, get your hands dirty, use the systems, learn how they work, their quirks, they're really weird systems and really fascinating, because that is by far the best way to understand them, because there is no manual. And then don't forget to develop yourself, your own sort of personal brand. I'm no Steve Jobs, but I wanted to twist his famous quote, and I think this is what it's going to be relevant, so stay curious and stay vigilant. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
How much did I miss the 20-minute mark?
It's okay.
It's okay?
Yeah. It's just
Holy
was
crap,
right.
I'm so sorry about that.
I think everyone stayed, so I think it's okay.
Thank you.
So if there are any questions that you want to pose,
I do have a question.
in public, you can.
So we're not predicting the future, none of us can. But when we use AI now, we always say this disclaimer, right? Always double check what the output is. And we do have the mental and intelligence to check on that, right? But as AI expands and gets bigger and bigger and more intelligent, whatever that means, are we gonna get to a point where we're not gonna be able to check on the output?
I assume that is a possibility, yes. It obviously depends on what you're asking the AI. There are things that you're definitely going to be able to check. There are people that are probably going to use some AI systems to check on what another AI system is doing as an output. It's going to be really weird and complicated. It really depends on what you're asking. And of course, it depends on how much of an expert you are. And it really depends on, how these systems are getting evaluated. There are these things called the evals, which are actually tests that are technically made for humans, but that, AI has been put to the test. These evals are getting saturated because the AIs are just getting past the human mark and getting closer and closer to 100%. So we're gonna have to find new ways to evaluate the outputs of the AI to understand what they're doing and hopefully a little bit more of how they're doing it, since we have almost no idea how that happens. It's gonna be weird, it's gonna be complicated, but yes.
And just to follow up, do you think prediction markets could be a way to validate the truth of something or not? Because I don't know, the loop's probably too long for prediction, but you could have certain truths that are coming out of an AI, and you put it out there, and you let everybody, the collective intelligence of the world, consider is it a truth or not? No, but you can't go into what's actually inside the model and all that, but you can actually figure out if it's a truth according to the world as a whole, because you've got all the different perspectives evaluated in the prediction market. Maybe.
That's really hard
It's kind of
because prediction markets are made for predictions, right? So something that has not happened yet, it's in the future, and you're trying to evaluate to sort of pull all the human knowledge together and see if it's priced in, if there is some sort of unexpected thing. So if an AI produces an output and you have to verify whether it's true, I mean, I assume you could have like some sort of public pools of experts.
True to who also? True
Exactly.
to what? True to human
Yeah,
values or emotion?
all
So
of
the
that.
more people you put together, that doesn't mean like a higher IQ. Like we're finite that way.
Yeah.
But the machine isn't. And I'm not saying it's gonna wake up and revolt against us and kill us all in our sleep. But
That's another line of thinking that it's definitely worth pursuing, that we know far too little about, that it's definitely under discussed.
well, that only might be 10.
It's one of the areas that I actually focused the most on, and it's very interesting, but it was definitely not going to be part of this talk, because that's just too much. It's its own thing, this whole field called AI alignment. If you care about the idea of, okay, these machines are going to get pretty smart, pretty intelligent, where is this all going to go? Are they going to wake up one day? Do we have some sort of
Cognitive.
special human sauce that for some reason, lost conscience only to be a part of the human body? Or is there reason to think that artificial brains could somehow gain some shred of consciousness? The truth is we have actually no idea.
I got two questions.
Yeah.
One is for you specifically, right? Where are you on the spectrum between AI doom and AI tech optimism, right? So there's this big spectrum here. The media's telling us this, and then we're seeing like Andressi and the tech companies going, the world's going to be completely different. You're not going to recognize it. Oh, we're going to live like kids, right? So where are you there on the spectrum after doing all the research and writing? And then secondly, how do you think we're going to, with all the diversity of the world, we have, I don't know how many languages, 7,000 languages, I don't know how many cultures, but with all that diversity, how are you ever going to converge on values. And those values also in the model are going to be interpreted differently by who creates the model and programs the model. So is every, I mean, I think Sam Altman's talking about localizing for countries and things. That's also something that's on the agenda, right? But, so first,
Is it though on the agenda? It feels like it definitely should be on the agenda. I'm afraid it really isn't.
Okay.
And so I tend to be a little pessimist about that. Like, I don't think that, you know,
another level of globalization, right?
it is.
Because it'll make everything flatter.
Like, is AI going to care about sub-Saharan people or, you know, the Uyghurs or, you know, other population like that? I don't know. I'm afraid not. If you're really interested in this topic, there is this absolutely fascinating read. It's called, this concept is called coherent extrapolated volition. And the basic idea behind it is that imagine if you could somehow essentially ask all of humanity what their values are, what they really want for the perfect version of AI, and how that would look like. It's utopia, of course. It's probably 99% not going to happen. So yeah, that is a real concern, and it's another one of those things that is definitely under discussed.
So the first question, why are you not sleeping? Are you sleeping because of excitement, or are you not sleeping because of fear?
I constantly oscillate, to be
You're not
honest.
sleeping, right?
There is part of me, I mean, I've been, again, following this stuff forever, so there's part of me that follows this stuff because I want to understand more, and I do generally feel that the people behind it are doing it because they believe in it, and they definitely believe that they want to keep control over it, because obviously nobody wants to lose control of the AI. At the same time, when we actually start to get into the sort of nitty-gritty technical details of how you're going to do that, arguments tend to dissolve. They're really weak arguments on just sort of first principles. And so that sort of skews me a little more toward doom. I don't really have, I think, enough technical knowledge and understanding to definitively say, okay, this is what I think. Again, very fact that I'm oscillating, it's because I don't have like firm anchors. I definitely think that the so-called doomers have their merits. The things that they say tend to be technically sound. They follow logic from first principles. And when you see people like Mark Andreessen just dismissing them because they say, oh no, this is just math. That's just a bad argument. Like, imagine you're like facing a tiger and it's going to attack you and you're like, no, who gives a shit? This is just, the tiger, it's just math. And then the tiger kills you, right? Because it actually attacks you. You know, so there's this thing. What the doers say and how the other people respond, and there's this definitely a mismatch.
And it serves about right in this kind of in this global context where everything tends to be more and more polarized. Yeah. So you have there's nothing in between the spectrum. It's probably either this or that, and it works for a number.
Unfortunately, for a topic that, as we were saying, definitely need a chisel and a lot of nuance. And people just realize, now it's going to be like this, it's going to be like that.
The fear I have is more of the geopolitical power.
Yeah.
Everything has always been controlled by power. Who has the most wealth and power and influence, right? And the American government, according to Andres, he's considered meetings there, they said, don't invest in ventures and small AI companies. There's only going to be one or two big AI companies, and we're going to control them. The US government, we're going to control them.
That's crazy, because these companies are already producing, as a middle African state, the GDP is probably the same as their turnover yearly, so they are powerful already.
Absolutely.
They count in global
And then what do you get when you get quantum computing and the power of AI, and you already have a lot of power? You get more and more power. You get like that.
And it's not public, there's no control, there's no international organization, it's not that they actually prove to work. But yeah, I'm not on the doom side, I'm just like,
That's how the internet
staying
started.
by.
The internet started as this open,
Well,
dialogue.
there is some sort of local, like,
It's not that-
some, like
it's not free.
multi-organization, well, there is some sort of like international body.
But the idealization of the internet, it's not embodied today as the internet is.
Right.
And how it was and what it is now, when the Web 2 and the control of like Instagram and Facebook, and we're not even close to what it was imagined to be as like a utopian type.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be able to talk. You can say something like that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's exactly this. We're very, very, very far from the ideal place where we should be in terms of just like international coordination, just agreeing on first principles.
Is there already
Right now it's
support
just-
group for all the people who cannot work? You know?
Sorry?
Is there already starting support group for all the people who cannot work? It sounds very dystopian.
Exactly.
You know, all these zombies on the streets, they
Right-
are all
right now-
their jobs.
Plumbers, roofers,
Dancers,
dancers,
all
you know.
Right now, it's mostly just unbridled capitalism just doing its thing.
Yeah.
And working, of
Yeah,
course.
absolutely.
Capitalism
That's the
works.
scary part.
That
Yes,
is.
and the thought that I have about this is that we already live, in a capitalist world, and we have to go faster and faster and to perform better and better. With AI, is even more easy to perform better because I use that every day at work, and I'm performing way better and in the minimum of the time. And I can figure out, since it is growing very, like from a shark to a whale, if we as human, we will have a limit of that. We will have a limit of speed and performances. Even with yes, there will be like a sort of a point of a cap or a point of no returning.
Definitely.
Where
And we reach that.
Part of the reason why,
Maybe not. Maybe not. I don't think so. That
probably not yet, because there's still a lot of stuff that we have to check on. You can, you know, one of the metaphors that are used for today's AI is like you have this, it's like having infinite interns. So it's like infinite time and patience, and you can tell them to do whatever, but you always have to check what you do, because they're still not reliable, they're still only just above average level. But yes, there's definitely going to be a count, because we cannot match the speed and computation power of a computer, let alone an intelligent computer. So at some point, if the AI is going to become more intelligent, it's likely going to take over. And then we have to really define how this transition works. And this is why, you know, one of the things that are talked about the most is the concept of UBI, so universal basic income, because in a world where, you know, the AI systems and machines take care of everything, like how do people sustain themselves? How does money work? These are big fundamental questions, and the idea that people say an AGI might come in within a decade is nothing, like, right? It's definitely not enough time to tackle this stuff if we don't start to think about it deeply right now. And I think that we're really, really behind. And part of the reason why we're behind is because people dismiss this point. They say, oh no, this is science fiction. And then again, as we saw, men won't fly for 1,000,000 years, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, if it's just something as simple as airplanes, which is science that we fully understand and we can regulate that, and that's the good regulation that we have, even though, you know, regulation has all sorts of problems. With the AI, we are not doing that. We're just, you know, letting these things go unbridled. It's insane. Like if you saw papers from like even just 6 or 7 years ago, AI researchers said, okay, when we're going to have systems that are going to be capable of doing roughly these things, they didn't really predict large language models as we have them today, but systems sufficiently intelligent to do this stuff. This stuff is going to be scary, it's going to be powerful. We're never going to give, surely we're never going to give access these things to the internet. And then of course that's the first thing that we do, and we actually market it as a feature, right? Oh, these systems can go online and just, you know, spread around. So we're definitely not being careful. That is why I give credit to the doomer arguments. I hate the word doomer, because doomer is just like, you know, the word is going to end. Everyone's literally going to die. If you want to follow that line of arguments, there's merits to it. You don't have to like actually believe every single one of the steps. But when they sort of lay out arguments, you start thinking about it like, okay, where is this argument wrong? And you sort of poke at the arguments, and you really find that it's actually quite solid. And so maybe we should start to listen to these people and, you know, what do they have to say? Because these systems are, today, we cannot control them, not fully. We have sort of rough patches that we put on sort of the end. Maybe you've seen the meme of the Shoggoth. You know what it is? No. The Shoggoth is like this sort of Cthulhu-ian kind of figure. So like with all the tentacles and arms, it's like this horrible figure. And then there's just like a sticker of a smiley face on top, right? That's the idea. It's like all this weird stuff is happening, and then we have some kind of way to control the output. But what is actually happening inside this black box? We have absolutely no clue what is happening there.
Yes, but everybody, me in particular, I don't know about others in this room, have seen too many science fiction movies and too many anime.
They also have to be true.
Yeah, that's the point. You know?
Science fiction turns out to be surprisingly accurate.
Yeah.
It's scary.
And all of this has to have 42 as an answer. It is.
I share the sentiment. It is scary. And the scarier thing is seeing how quickly people dismiss this argument. That's the scariest part.
What do you think about the statement that there's going to be two kinds of companies existing like in 5 years' time? Those that have adopted AI and those that are bankrupt.
I think, again, it really depends on the nature of what you're doing. There's certain, it's like, go back 20 years and you get catapulted in the mid-90s and you have hindsight of the future and you say, there's going to be two kinds of companies, those who adopt the internet and those who don't. That's true. There's companies that leverage the internet and those who don't and disappear. But at the same time,
the Magic 7 or with 8 where there's now Google and all those companies.
yeah,
Fully went to the
that is true for some people, but like your brick and mortar of a mom shop down the road, still, maybe it's still alive. It's not thriving, but it's still alive because what happens with the internet is that it leverages a lot of the economy, but not 100% of it. And I think that AI is going to be deeper than the internet, so it's largely going to be like that, but not for literally everything. Again, really hard to make predictions like that.
I want to ask you something. If I just curiosity, I don't know how much you could be into because we know that they're pretty close. So I don't know if you're studying it, but do you know China where it is at this point of the stuff?
Most people say that China is far, far behind. My intuition is that that is not true. China is behind, but it's not. I mean, there's three important things in AI. One is data, two is the algorithms, and three is the compute. China has the data and has the algorithm. It doesn't have the compute, and that is solely because we have regulations that prohibit the sort of the high-end chips to get into those labs. Right? If we were to lift those embargoes, China would probably catch up in a year or so. They're not that far behind.
China has the energy, because that energy problem will be a huge problem.
That's a whole other argument. It's
The whole sustainability.
immensely complicated.
And the water consumption, to cool the systems down.
All of that.
Okay, guys, I don't want to interrupt you, but we can say thank you very much to our remote people that follow us. Thank you very much. If you want to continue to discuss, we can finish this.